Party in Australia. Thank you.
Order. I'm calling in Lees-Galloway.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. What a bizarre and shambolic contribution that was from David Bennett. He started off talking about the Australian Labor Party. He's so embarrassed by this piece of legislation, he couldn't even bring himself to talk about the New Zealand Parliament, let alone the bill that the New Zealand Parliament is addressing at the moment. And then he went on to talk about, I don't know, something about hierarchy of wages, and actually probably got to the heart of what this legislation is about, because he said he wants to ensure that people start on the lowest rate possible. He wants to make sure that the entry rates are lower so that the whole hierarchy comes down, because that party believes in dropping wages. Their own leader said, "I would love to see wages drop." That's because the National Party believes in driving wages down, keeping workers down. That's all that the National Party lives for. But I've got to be honest. I like quoting David Bennett. I like quoting David Bennett. My favourite one from a few years ago was, "The government isn't here to make your life better." That was my particular favourite from David Bennett. The government is not here to make your life better. And my goodness, we couldn't ask for a better representation of David Bennett's mantra of "the government is not here to make your life better" than this piece of legislation. But that's not all. That's not all, because David Bennett has had a range of views on this issue. A mere 2 years ago, David Bennett said, "I encourage those people who are listening and members in the House to look at this issue in the wider perspective of what we want to achieve in setting some incentives and some direction, not try to scaremonger or create perceptions that if we have a lower rate of pay at the first level of employment, those opportunities will necessarily be provided." David Bennett, take a bow. I couldn't agree more with what David Bennett said 2 years ago in this House. It wasn't just David Bennett, it was Jackie Blue as well, and I think at the time, Paula Bennett didn't like the idea of youth rates. The Minister of Labour at the time, Kate Wilkinson, whatever's happened to her, she didn't agree with youth rates either. This National Party flip-flops all over the place. They were in favour of it when they were in opposition, then they were opposed to it when they were in government. Now, a couple of years later in government, they're in favour of it again. They're all at sea. What an absolute shambles this government is. Let's be real about what this bill truly represents. It represents the failure of this government. It represents the failure of the National Party to grow the economy. It represents the failure of the National Party to create more jobs. It represents the failure of the National Party to keep people in education, to make sure there are places available at universities and polytechnics and in apprenticeships. It is an absolute demonstration of what happens when a government comes to power with absolutely no economic plan at all. And so what we've got is people losing jobs at telecom, in the productive sector, people losing engineering jobs, people losing high-skill, high-wage jobs. And so now, more and more of those people are competing with youngsters for those entry-level jobs at McDonald's, at Burger King, at Wendy's, at Pack and Save, at Countdown. That's the real problem here, is those jobs that should be the entry-level jobs, and often are the minimum wage jobs, that youngsters used to basically be the only people who were applying for those jobs. Now young people face massive competition from people who have been turfed out of their jobs because this economy is so weak. And look, we accept that there's a certain nature of evolution in the job market. Some jobs will come and some will go, some industries will rise, some businesses will rise, others will fall. But as businesses fall, if the economy's in good health, there will be other jobs for people to go to. There will be other high-skill, high-wage jobs for people to go to. But no, the only place where there are new jobs is in the fast food and supermarket industries, which is why this bill is being introduced or is being passed by this government, because young people are having to compete so hard against the older workforce for those low-skill, low-wage jobs. What happened to the aspiration? What happened to the brighter future? Where did it all go? It's all gone to Australia, that's right. They've all flown to Australia. And the members opposite can say what they like about what's happening with the Australian government at the moment. They can say whatever they like, but they are taking our talented young people. People are seeing more opportunity in Australia than they are seeing in New Zealand. So if I were those members, I wouldn't be crowing about what's happening in Australia, because they are still doing a better job than what any of those members could do in government. That is the real situation. Look, there is no justice in telling young people that their work is worth less than somebody else doing the same job as them who is just a couple of years older. That is an unjustifiable discrimination. This House has been doing a very good job of dealing with other forms of unjustifiable discrimination in the past few weeks, and yet here the national government is reintroducing another form of absolutely unjustifiable discrimination. The fact is that the thing that the government says this bill is supposed to achieve, which is to give young people a supposed leg up by allowing them to get into a job at a lower wage rate, already exists. It already exists. And yet we still have massive youth unemployment. We still have no growth in jobs. We still have no growth in the economy. So doing more of what we've already got isn't going to change things. That's the real situation, and this is simply a representation of this government's failure. Under National's watch, 72,000 young New Zealanders aged between 18 and 30 have disappeared to Australia because that's where the job opportunities are, that's where the wages are, that's where the good working conditions are, that's where the unions are strong. Paying lower wages and eroding workers' rights and beating up the unions will only send more of our talented, valuable young people away overseas. And it's more and more likely that they will be lost to us forever. John Key has lost his ambition. He's lost the vision for a brighter future. He is content with New Zealand being mediocre, being second best. He's content, he is ambiguous for New Zealand. He's content with our country being a place of low wages, low opportunity, and where people are leaving in droves for better opportunities overseas. You don't improve the lot of our future generations by paying them less for doing exactly the same job as someone who is older than them. There is no justification for doing it. We'd like to see the evidence, actually. We've heard a lot of rhetoric from the National Party, but we'd actually like to see the evidence. And I think that the National Party should listen to their own members a little bit more closely. Paula Bennett, we are not convinced that it would reduce youth unemployment, plus it would be a distraction from the really important work of improving productivity and growing the economy in order to create long-term jobs, which will keep young people in New Zealand. Well, that was 2 years ago. Where is Paula Bennett now? Why is she not focused on improving productivity? Why is she not focused on growing the economy? Why is she not focused on keeping young people here in New Zealand working for this country's future? Mr. Speaker, this bill demonstrates how this shambolic national government has failed New Zealanders, failed our young people, failed to grow the economy, and the sooner their term comes to an end and New Zealand can be put on the path towards success, the better.
I call Holly Walker.